For 10 years, my mother-in-law ran a white-gloved finger along my shelves, handed me her coat at the door, and introduced me to her friends by saying, "My son's wife. She keeps the house." She keeps the house. If she only knew how right she was. My name is Grace. I am 38 years old, and this is the story of the longest-held tongue in the state of North Carolina. To understand it, you have to start with my grandmother, Rose. Rose raised me, more or less. My parents worked double shifts, so my summers belonged to a white farmhouse on Linden Lane. It had a wraparound porch and a kitchen that smelled like biscuits and coffee since 1960. Rose was a small woman with strong opinions. She taught me to cook, to sew, to keep a ledger, and to hold my cards. She used to say, "Never tell everything you know, sugar. A good house holds its tongue. So should you." When Rose passed away 14 years ago, I found out what she had done. She left me the house, the farmhouse on Linden Lane, free and clear. The deed was in my name, filed and recorded before I had even dried my eyes. Her letter said, "A woman with her own roof can afford to be patient with this world. Be patient, sugar, but not forever." 2 years later, I married Paul. Paul is a good man with a soft spine. I say that with love because the spine grows back. You will see. Paul managed a tire distribution warehouse. He was funny, gentle, and steady. And he came with a mother, Judith. Judith met me exactly once before deciding what I was. My father drove a forklift. My mother cleaned offices. Therefore, I was, and I quote from Judith's toast at my own rehearsal dinner, "a sweet little thing from simple people, marrying up." Marrying up. I sat at that dinner with the deed to a paid-off farmhouse tucked safely away and my grandmother's ring on my hand. I heard Rose's voice. A good house holds its tongue. So I smiled, and I held mine. For 10 years. Here's how the secret started. I want to be fair to Paul, so I will tell it straight. When we got engaged, Paul had $11,000 in savings and a used truck. When I told him about the farmhouse, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Could we maybe not lead with that around my mother? She already thinks I have not done enough with my life. If she finds out we are living in your house, I will never hear the end of it." It seemed harmless, a small kindness to his pride. So we moved into Linden Lane, and we let Judith believe what she wanted to believe. And what Judith wanted to believe was that her Paul had bought a fine old farmhouse for his little wife. She never asked. People like Judith never ask. Assumptions fit them like tailored coats. That one small kindness became the longest-running play in North Carolina, and I had the only unlisted role, the maid. Every Sunday for years, Judith and her husband, Gordon, came to dinner. Judith arrived like an inspection. Her coat went into my arms, a white-gloved finger ran along the shelf by the door, a little hum if it passed, a little tch if it did not. At the table, she spoke to Paul about the house as if I were staff. "Paul, the porch railing needs paint. Paul, your azalea beds are a disgrace. Paul, this pot roast needs salt." But I suppose she is still learning. She, sitting right there, having cooked it in my grandmother's kitchen from my grandmother's recipe box on my grandmother's stove. I would catch Paul's eye. He would give me that pained little smile that meant, "Please, it is easier this way." And Rose's voice would say, "Be patient, sugar." So I refilled the gravy, and I held my tongue. But I will tell you a secret about patience. Real patience is not swallowing things forever. Real patience is a ledger. Somewhere around the 3rd year, without even meaning to, I started keeping one. Not on paper,
In here. Every coat handed to me, every white glove, every time Judith said she is still learning. Rose kept ledgers too, and Rose always said the same thing when she closed the book at night. Everything gets totaled eventually, sugar. Everything.
8 years ago, Gordon passed away. It was a quiet heart attack in his recliner, halfway through a golf broadcast. I grieved him honestly. Gordon was decent. Once he slipped $20 into my hand in the kitchen and whispered, "The roast was perfect, kid. It always is." At the funeral reception, in my living room, Judith gripped Paul's arm and announced to the assembled mourners, "Well, I certainly cannot stay in that big empty house alone. Paul, you have all this room." She moved in 11 days later. "Temporarily," she said. 2 weeks, she said. A month at most. She stayed for 6 years. Do you know what it is like to be treated as a maid in your own grandmother's house? Let me walk you through the shift. Coffee at 7 a.m., black, in the blue china cup, not the white one. The white one is for guests, Grace, honestly. Laundry on Tuesdays, but her blouses had to be washed by hand. Dinner at 6 p.m., sharp. If it appeared at 6:10, she tapped her watch and told Paul, "In this house, we kept standards once, I suppose. In this house." Her friends came for bridge on Thursdays. I served lemon squares in my own kitchen while Judith held court. One afternoon, I heard her through the door. "Oh, Grace? She keeps the house. Every Paul needs a Grace. My son could have done better, but the help you know is better than the help you do not." The bridge ladies laughed. I stood in the kitchen with a tray in my hands, 34 years old, in the house my grandmother had left me, being called the help. And Paul, my Paul, was shrinking, year by year. He worked longer, he came home later, he agreed faster. It was easier. Always easier. And easier is a slow leak in a man. The night I nearly broke was smaller than all of that. It always is. Judith decided the kitchen needed modernizing. I came home from work and found contractor brochures on the counter. By the back door was a cardboard box marked "Donate." Inside, right on top, was Rose's recipe box. Handwritten cards. 60 years of them. Biscuits, funeral casseroles, margin notes in fading pencil. All of it in the Donate box. I picked it up, carried it upstairs, and placed it in my closet, right beside a folder Judith had never seen. A folder with a deed inside. Standing in that closet, I heard Rose as clearly as if she were beside me. "Be patient, sugar, but not forever." Not Forever arrived on a Tuesday in October, wearing a realtor's blazer. I came home early from work with a migraine. There were voices in my living room. Judith, speaking at full volume, and a stranger with the bright, eager voice of someone who earned a commission. I stopped in the hallway and listened. The stranger said, "Homes like this are gold right now. With the acreage, you could be looking at $620,000 to $640,000. This is only a preliminary estimate, of course. I would still need to check the ownership records before preparing an actual listing." Judith answered, "Wonderful. Paul will sign whatever needs signing." Then she lowered her voice, but not enough. "And between us, Magnolia Estates says 2 units just opened, one for me and the little 1-bedroom for Paul and Grace. It is time this family consolidated. This house is far too much for her to keep up anyway." The little 1-bedroom for Paul and Grace. She was planning to sell my grandmother's house, buy herself a country club retirement, and downsize me into a guest suite in my own life. I did not walk in. Not yet. Rose did not raise a woman who played her hand in the hallway. I went upstairs. I took 2 aspirin. Then I opened the closet. The folder, the deed, Rose's letter, and every property tax receipt I had paid, quietly, from my own account since the day Rose died. Then I called Paul at the warehouse. I said 5 words I had never said in 10 years of marriage.
Family meeting, Saturday. My house. There was a long pause. Then Paul said, quietly, "Did you say your house?" I said, "That is right, sweetheart. Mine. We will discuss ownership on Saturday. Bring your mother." Saturday came. Judith swept into the living room as if she had called the meeting herself. She brought the realtor, who explained that Judith had asked her to bring sample listing forms for a preliminary discussion. The realtor perched on Rose's settee like a nervous gull. Judith clicked her pen and pushed the sample papers toward Paul. "Sign here and here, darling. Grace, be a dear and put coffee on. The adults have business." And there it was. 10 years totaled in one sentence. I said, "No coffee today, Judith." I placed my folder on the table. "Before anyone discusses a sale, there is something about this house that you have never known." Then I looked at Paul. "Paul, honey, it is time." Paul looked at his mother. Then he looked at me. And my husband, God bless him, found the first inch of his spine in years. He said, "Mom, sit down."
Judith did not sit. Judith did not take direction in what she believed was her son's house. So I opened the folder and took direction off the table. I said, "This is the deed to this property. It was recorded 14 years ago. Read the name." The realtor got there first. She leaned over, read the deed, and made a small sound, like a kettle taken off the stove too early. Then she said, "Judith, the owner of record is Grace, sole and separate. The property became hers before the marriage. Paul cannot authorize a sale. There is nothing here for him to sign." Silence. Judith stared at the paper, then at Paul. Then she gave one sharp laugh. "That is absurd. Paul bought this house. Paul, tell her, tell them." Paul stood in the middle of that living room, 40 years old at the time, and finally paid off 10 years of small kindnesses to his pride, with interest. He said, "No, Mom, I did not buy it. Grace's grandmother left it to her before I even proposed. We let you assume otherwise because I was embarrassed. That is on me." He took a breath. "But every wall you tried to redecorate, every dinner you graded, and every year you lived here without paying rent was under Grace's roof. You have been a guest of the woman you called the help." I watched Judith's face do arithmetic, 10 years of it, recalculating all at once. The coats, the gloves, the blue china cup at 7 o'clock. The help. She turned to me. Her voice came out low. "You let me. For 10 years, you let me make a fool of myself." I answered calmly, "No, Judith, I let you be exactly who you chose to be, in a house that held its tongue. You made the fool part all by yourself." The realtor was already moving toward the door. She murmured something about another appointment. Judith gathered herself the way her kind do, spine of frost. Then she played her last card. "Well, if this is how I am treated, perhaps I should simply leave." It is the oldest move in the book, the threatened exit meant to summon begging. I did not beg. I said, "I think that is a wonderful idea. Take the month. Magnolia Estates sounds lovely, and Marlene is already expecting your call." Judith blinked. Paul did not say a word to stop her. And upstairs, in a closet, 60 years of recipe cards sat quietly, patient things, waiting to come back to the kitchen.
Of course, it was not that clean. These things never are. Judith spent a week telling the extended family that I had deceived everyone for a decade. The phone calls came. I answered every one the same way. "The county records office is open Monday through Friday. Look it up yourselves. While you are there, notice who has paid every property tax bill since Rose died." 2 cousins actually checked. The call stopped. Judith moved in with Paul's sister, Heather. And I want to pause on Heather because Heather deserves it. For 10 years, Heather had giggled at the bridge table jokes. At Thanksgiving, at my own table, Heather once called me Cinderella. And let me tell you, she did not mean the ending. Heather lived 40 minutes away in a lovely open-concept house. Many times she had loudly offered, "Mother can always come to me if Grace's home is not up to standard." Judith took her up on it. It took 5 months. 5 months of coffee at 7 o'clock in the correct cup. 5 months of blouses washed by hand. 5 months of dinner graded at 6 o'clock sharp. 5 months of white gloves running across the ledges of that lovely open concept house. By the 3rd month, Heather was calling Paul every week. By the 5th month, she called me. Me. "Grace, I am so sorry. I did not know. I did not know it was like this. How did you do 10 years? I answered sweetly, "Oh, Heather, I just kept the house." Judith has her own apartment now. A nice one, near the club. She can afford it perfectly well. Gordon left her comfortable. The tragedy was never money. The tragedy was that she wanted a kingdom, and the only kingdom available was mine. As for Paul and me, we did the unglamorous thing. Counseling. Tuesday evenings. A beige office. A box of tissues. It turns out that 10 years of saying, "It is easier this way," leaves a mark on a marriage. Paul apologized for the years he watched. I apologized for the vault I had become. We are better now than we were on our wedding day, and I do not say that lightly. The spine grew back. I told you it would. Last spring, Paul repainted the porch railing himself. When he finished, he stepped back and said, "You know what's funny? Mom was right about one thing. The railing really did need paint." We laughed until the neighbors looked. You are probably wondering about Christmas. Everyone always wonders about Christmas. The first December after Judith moved out, she did not come. Her chair sat empty. And I will be honest, dinner was delicious anyway. The second December, she called Paul and asked stiffly, what might one bring if one were to attend? She arrived with a store-bought pie and her spine of frost. She sat in my living room like a diplomat in a rival nation, but somewhere between the roast and the coffee, served in whatever cup I pleased, thank you, she went quiet. She was staring at the recipe box. It was back on the shelf beside the stove where it had belonged since Rose's own mother first used that kitchen. Judith said, almost to herself, "My mother had one of those. A card box, her handwritten recipes. My brother's wife threw it away during a spring cleaning 40 years ago. I never forgave her." Then she looked at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in all those years. She said, "You saved yours from the donate box, I suppose?" I answered, "The first thing I did." Judith nodded slowly. "Well, Rose raised you right." It was not an apology. Women like Judith do not apologize easily, but she has not brought her white gloves into my house since. And when her friends ask about me now, I am told she says, "My son's wife, Grace. The house on Linden Lane has been in her family for generations." In her family for generations. Rose inherited it from her own mother. Then she left it to me. From Judith, that sentence was a peace treaty, signed and notarized. So that is my story. 10 years as a maid in a castle that belonged to me the entire time. People ask why I waited so long, why I did not place the deed on the table in the first year. Here is my answer, and it is Rose's answer too. A deed can win an argument any day of the week, but patience shows you exactly who everyone is, what they do when they think you own nothing, who laughs at the bridge table, who shrinks, and who grows back. The house held its tongue for 10 years. When it finally spoke, there was nothing left to argue about. So, if someone in your life has decided that you are the help, let them run their white glove along your shelf. Just make sure your name is on something they cannot imagine. And be patient, sugar. But not forever. If this story held you until the end, subscribe to Vermilion Veil. There's a new story every single day. And behind every veil, the truth is waiting to burn.